Peter Maderi Kaira, who is a testicular cancer survivor. We'll talk more about which kind of cancer he survived. And of course, joining us on the phone from Meru is Professor Lilian Lawford Imunde, who is a prostate cancer survivor. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me on this conversation. But before we get to it, let's familiarize ourselves with what exactly ED is. If we can have that or those graphics on screen. Erectile dysfunction, which in some cases impotence, is the inability to get and keep an erection firm enough for sex. Now, causes are erectile dysfunction can result from a problem with the brain, hormones, emotions, nerves, muscles, and blood vessels. And stress and mental health concerns can also cause or worsen erectile dysfunction. Dr. will break that down for us in a moment. Now, symptoms of the same persistent symptoms will be trouble getting an erection, trouble keeping an erection, and reduced sexual desire. When you talk about treatment, sometimes treating an underlying condition is enough to reverse erectile dysfunction. In other cases, medications or other direct treatments like surgery might be needed. So, Dr. we have defined what erectile dysfunction is, and of course, most people will be stuck at what causes it.
Thank you, Gladys. For me to be able to let the audience and the public know the causes of erectile dysfunction, I think it's good to, first of all, just if you allow me to give a brief description of actually how an erection happens, so that when we have what we know, then you can go on to actually what the problems are. So I'll start by saying that an erection is a complex interplay of so many things in a man's body. First of all, there has to be what is called a stimulation of the mind. And this can occur from different sources. The eyes, all the common senses in the world that you can be able to talk about. So the eyes, the ears, the nose, the taste of smell, the taste of touch, and also the imagination. So a man will get this stimulation in the mind, and then it will be transmitted by nerves, which go along the spine, eventually to get to the circulation, which you call the blood vessels, that actually now supply the penis. It is this blood that flows into the penis that will cause an erection. So once we've described it like that, and then you also get to understand that you also have the interplay of hormones in a man. So that interplay between the nerves, the hormones, the blood vessels, the mind, and the senses contributes towards getting a normal erection. So once I've described it that way, then you begin saying that a problem in any of these circuits can interfere with an erection. This would be a problem that is maybe a problem with the senses, so that a person is not able to perceive any sensation or any impulse or any stimulation that can trigger that stimulation. You can have a problem with the mind, which you call psychogenic erectile dysfunction, such that somebody, as much as everything else might be intact, but the state of mind does not allow somebody to be able to have an erection. You can have a problem in the mind, the transmission of the impulses from the brain to the erectile centers that are there in the spine, such that if you have a disruption in these nerves, you get a problem. And the disruption of the nerves can be physical, or it can be due to some underlying medical conditions. You can have a problem with blood supply that ultimately contributes to the majority of the cases of erectile dysfunction, especially in people as they grow older. So basically, maybe as you go along, I'll be able to outline so many of these causes, but in very brief outline, any disruption in this system, together with the final delivery of blood to the penis, and an abnormality with the penis, and the flow of blood from the penis to the outside, can cause erectile dysfunction.
Okay, so at that point, we are more familiar with exactly what the conversation is about and what we're trying to understand this morning. And let's bring in those that wear these shoes. Peter Maderi is a testicular cancer survivor. And if you can have the graphics on screen to just understand what this cancer is. Do we have those graphics on screen? All right, so this is a cancer that occurs in the testicles, the testes, which are located inside the scrotum. Cancer usually affects only one of the testicles. Now, the symptoms to the same: a lump or enlargement in either testicle, a feeling of heaviness in the scrotum, a dull ache in the abdomen or groin, a sudden collection of fluid in the scrotum, pain or discomfort in a testicle or the scrotum, enlargement or tenderness of the breasts. Back pain is also common in the same. Now, treatment is chemotherapy, radiation therapy, and also surgery. And for some patients, these procedures can have sexual side effects, including erectile dysfunction. So, Peter, when did you get diagnosed with testicular cancer?
The problem started way back in 2016, and like any other man, I was not willing to go for diagnosis. And when it persisted, that is when I went and got my first surgery. That was in January 2019. And after the first surgery, I went for another surgery in May of the same year. And after the biopsy and restaging, that is when it was discovered that I was having that rare type of cancer. And immediately I was put on treatment, which was chemotherapy. And I went through and did all the cycles that were prescribed. And then after that, I started now doing the follow-ups.
Okay, now we talked about the symptoms. Which of these did you have?
One of the symptoms was a ripe node in one of the testicles. And then initially it was not painful. And with the time, the pain was not in the affected area but went to the lower back pain. I experienced very severe lower back pain. Which was so much for me to bear, because I even remember being put on palliative medicine, and it was only when I started my chemo that the pain was able to subside.
So apart from the chemotherapy, what other treatment process did you go through?
So first of all, I did some surgery. First one I did in January of 2019. The second one I did in May of 2019. And before the procedure of biopsy and the staging was over, I was being put on palliative medicine. And it was only in July of 2019 that I started my chemo cycles, which I did for 6 consecutive months.
Okay, now, Dr. let's just go back to what he's dealing with. It's called metastatic classic seminoma, which is a rare testicular cancer. And he survived it, and he says he had actually a lot of the symptoms we just talked about, including the back pain. I know it's rare, but do you see it in your patients?
Actually, testicular cancer is not that rare. Because it's actually one of the commonest cancers among the younger population age groups. So we say somebody who might be having a mass in the testes in the lower age groups below the age of 35, in urology we say this person has cancer of the testes until proved otherwise. So it's not a rare cancer. And contrary to the expectation that you might have it presenting as erectile dysfunction, it will mostly present, because the testis actually is part of the hormone system that goes towards making a man's sexuality complete. but mostly in the sense of causing infertility. So the aspect of erectile dysfunction might come if at all there have been some interventions to deal with that testis, like maybe removal of the testis or some of the medications that have been used to treat the cancer. Sometimes it's possible that if somebody has metastatic cancer of the testis that has spread to the spine and other areas that are now interfering with the circuits that I described earlier, it is possible to get erectile dysfunction because the nerves come from the spine to be able to come to the the penis and cause the excitation that leads to blood flowing into the penis. So any metastatic disease, not just testicular cancer, has got the potential to cause erectile dysfunction. And then remember also, when you're dealing with cancer of any type, it is something that basically affects a patient's mind. And in this environment, especially with the younger people, you have something which is growing in your testes. Already it causes some disturbance of the mind. You have a disease that you've been diagnosed to be cancer. It causes a disturbance of the mind. You have the metastasis, which means basically the cancer is spread to different parts of the body. So the delivery, the excitation in the nerves, there are problems. So there are very many factors in this person that can be able to lead to erectile dysfunction. But that is the least of his problems.
Yes. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. Let's bring in Professor Lilian Lawford Imunde, who is a prostate cancer survivor. Before we hear his journey, let's have those graphics on air to just familiarize ourselves with the same. Prostate cancer is one of the most common types of cancers in men. It occurs in the prostate, a small walnut-shaped gland in men that produces the seminal fluid that nourishes and transports sperm. Now, the symptoms in this case is most often than not, those with prostate cancer might not have any symptoms, but if it's more advanced, these are the symptoms you're bound to deal with: trouble urinating, decreased force in the stream of urine, blood in semen, discomfort in the pelvic area, bone pain, and erectile dysfunction. So let's bring in Professor. Professor, when were you diagnosed with prostate cancer?
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So when were you diagnosed, Professor?
Sometimes in October of 2018. Yeah.
And what are these symptoms you had that made you think something was wrong?
To begin with, you see, I had a problem of urinating, right? And then, after that, you see, I found it increasingly difficult to have any interest, for example, in sex, for example. And this continued for some time until months later, about a year or so into the process of treatment, that's when, it became very obviously clear to me that something had gone wrong. One, my testicles became smaller and smaller, and often had some pain in them. And then, more than anything else, I just didn't have any interest, say, in sex, and that is the thing that made me turn to Dr. Msango and I said, Doctor, something is wrong with me. I don't feel anything like a normal man that I've always been. Yeah.
So, in retrospect, how long did it take from the point where you saw something was wrong to when you actually went to the doctor?
I just went. I told the doctor, first of all, he put me on a series of courses of medicine, until after about a year or so. Then that is when I discovered, I didn't have any interest. And, you know, something else which was very funny, you know, in my opinion, is that I started noticing my breasts were growing bigger, and I started experiencing some bit of pain. And that is when I realized, together with the other things which I've mentioned, I discovered that there must be something related to perhaps the medicine I was taking or something. And so I decided to ask the doctor exactly what the problem might be.
Okay, and what are the treatment plans you've been on since the diagnosis?
First of all, my doctor was very proficient in the way he approached my case, because immediately after the diagnosis, we had to establish at what stage my cancer had progressed, and then to be sure, he decided to have me do a bone scan, which I did. And that assured him, and of course myself, that the cancer germs or whatever had not spread to the bone.
Okay.
And that made it easier for me or for the doctor to continue the kind of medicine that he had put me now on.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now let's pause at that point and bring in Dr. So this is one of the most common cancers in men. How common is it?
Now, prostate cancer is the commonest cancer actually in men. Huh? And we say that it is so common, and practically in over 80% of people who have died and have been subjected to post-mortems, who didn't even know whether they had cancer or not, and you do post-mortems on them, you will find evidence of cancer of the prostate in their specimens. So the exact incidence here in Kenya is not quite known, but what I can say is in the entire lifespan of an individual, they are likely to develop it. And it's a very slow-growing cancer.
Okay.
So many people will go through life with cancer of the prostate without even knowing that they had cancer. Some people will get it earlier on in their life, depending on so many other factors, which maybe we can talk about as we go on. But the essence of it all is that cancer of the prostate manifests as a disease of the prostate. Okay? And diseases of the prostate in men, as a lot of them will end up also causing erectile dysfunction. So it is not so much, I don't want us to get out of this room thinking about cancer of the prostate with erectile dysfunction. Otherwise, people might begin thinking anytime they have erectile dysfunction,
they have cancer.
Cancer.
Yeah.
So that will be the wrong message to get out of here. But yes, it is true, cancer of the prostate, because it's a disease within the prostate and it's very common, it can present as erectile dysfunction.
All right. Yes. And now you say you can go through all your life without knowing you have prostate cancer, and we mentioned in the early stages the symptoms are absent. Why is that?
I'll put it this way. You see, cancer is an abnormality of growth of cells in a place where the normal cells should be, such that over a period of time, this is irrespective of which part of the body you're talking about in cancer. So the normal cells that are there, they undergo some sequential changes. And these changes could be due to some genes within the person. There could be environmental factors which are causing some irritation. There could be some factors in the diet. There could be factors that are there in the family, okay? Such that eventually some normal cells in the body or some abnormal cells which somebody was born with, they begin growing over time. Because every human being exists in equilibrium, where the cells want to be abnormal, and other cells are dying, and other cells are growing. So there is a delicate tip that now makes the cancer cells begin growing outside the body's confines. And that is why we say you can have cancer that remains in a very indolent or very non-growing form for very many years without causing any problem. So some triggers in life happen to make it begin growing. So that's why we say cancer of the prostate per se should not be something that we go looking for so much. We begin getting concerned if we know that somebody, an individual, has relatives who have cancer of the prostate, or somebody begins having problems with their urination, which might be due to prostate issues. And among the prostate issues, the commonest, of course, would be infections. Others would just be age-related changes where somebody begins having problems with their urination. But as we do this, we now take the opportunity to screen for prostate cancer because it might be there and it might be complicating the picture.
Okay.
Yes.
So, Peter, Daktari said that ED might not even be your biggest worry at this point. Now, take us step by step. When did you realize something was off, especially when it came now to your reproductive health?
So, the moment I came to realize that there was a problem with my reproductive health, you know, each and every person knows the level of his sexuality.
Please speak up.
Yeah, if each person knows the level of his sexuality.
Yes.
And the level at which you are initially. If it goes like going down, you always come to realize that there is a problem. But thanks to the doctor who took me through the counseling session, because before I started my chemo, I was made aware of some of the side effects that I would expect. And though the problem had started sometime after surgery, so I was made aware that after I start doing my chemo, that is one of the things that I would expect, because there is even one who had suggested that I do a sperm harvest, and then so that in case I needed to like have a child in the future, it could not be possible through the reproductive organ, then I would be sorted. But since I was so much stressed, because by then I didn't even have the idea of having a child. You know, in most cases when the news are broken about you having a cancer disease, most of the things that normally regards in the mind, one of them is death. And so there is no way that you can be thinking of death and at the same time you are thinking of children. So me, I did not give that issue of sperm harvesting a thought. And that was just one of the side effects that we will talk about. And the others that were there, I did experience them. And with that one of erectile dysfunction, because I was already prepared. For me, I was not worried about it. And he would always keep reassuring me that that is something that would have been corrected. And because once it is corrected, and once you adopt to a healthier lifestyle, it is not something that can be permanent, as in you become impotent, because there are some people who normally confuse erectile dysfunction for impotence, because you can experience an erectile dysfunction, but you are not impotent, because with impotence this is where basically you are not able to sire. And so, yeah, with that one I don't get so much worried. And I went through, and something that was funny, in each and every cycle, after I've done a cycle, when I go back for the next one, I think the more it was becoming cumulative. It was cumulative.
Yeah.
It was cumulative. The more drugs you take, the more the more the severe the problem.
Okay, so you are still on medication, right?
No, right now I'm not on medication.
Okay, and you said you never harvested your sperms.
I never harvested.
So did you have those long-term side effects that the doctor was talking about?
So the kind of long-term side effects that the doctor is talking about, yeah, they did not take that long, but I wish to get some advice from the doctor because one, I would attain an erection.
Okay.
Number two, initially it would not last long. Now it is lasting long. But the problem is there's nothing like ejaculation.
I see. Okay. All right. That's a good point to raise. So, Daktari, Peter underwent surgery, and it's after surgery, and he had been counseled about the possibilities of the complications you were talking about, erectile dysfunction, and in this case, he was also told there was a high risk of infertility. So, in this case, he says, after the fact, he was able to actually sustain he's able to sustain an erection, but he notices that there is no ejaculation matter. Explain.
Now, without specifically talking about Peter or any of the other patients, because it's a bit awkward to discuss somebody on live on air, but I'll look at it in a general way, somebody who has got testicular cancer. You know, as I said, testicular cancer per se should not cause erectile dysfunction. Because, let me start by saying that in young people below the age of 40 years, most of the causes of erectile dysfunction will be psychogenic. Okay?
Which means psychological.
Which will be psychological, because somebody maybe has anxiety, what we call performance anxiety. Somebody has short-circuited the circuits because of indulging in many other alternatives, methods of having a sexual intercourse, like maybe masturbation or a lot of watching pornography. These are very easy ways of getting sexual fulfillment in young people, especially in this era where there is a lot of attention and men are being told that you have to let the woman take the lead. So a lot of young people will actually shy away from having a normal sexual relationship with a female. Over a period of time, this becomes the norm, such that it becomes difficult for them to have a normal erection. Others will have abused substances, all right, like alcohol or other drugs, in the desire to be able to have quick sexual fulfillment, and these ones destroy the circuits. So and then now you have the slightly older populations who have underlying medical conditions, and as I said, most of them will not be cancers. We are dealing here with maybe patients who might be having cancers and erectile dysfunction as a coincidence, because a lot of the people with erectile dysfunction will not come up in open when they do not have a physical cause that has been identified. So the other thing which I want the audience to know, because there's a very high possibility that people will begin associating erectile dysfunction with some cancers. Now, so let's say now somebody has testicular cancer. This, at the very worst, it can cause some hormone problems if at all both testes are involved. But God is not that unkind to give you two cancers in both testes at the same time at a very young age. Normally one will be involved, but the other one is a spare of the other one. So it will continue doing the function of the testis that has been removed by intervention. Okay, so the hormone circuits will most likely be intact, but remember, this is still an individual, and all these other causes of erectile dysfunction are still at play. The mental aspect, okay, then the side effects of the treatment, and other things. Now, we don't know the extent of surgery that has been done, so that somebody now begins having what the gentleman described as an erection, and then what is coming out like empty ejaculation. Okay, we call that in medical terms retrograde ejaculation, because the ejaculate goes back into the body, into the bladder, instead of going out. Now, this is not a direct effect of the cancer. It might be a side effect of some medications that he is on,
Okay.
or some interventions that were done that blocked part of the tubes that bring out the semen, and so it goes back inside. So, as I said, it's not possible to discuss the patient per se, that he will need actually to see a urologist who is going to take him through to understand in his particular situation what could be causing all those things. So, message here is testicular cancer should not on its own cause erectile dysfunction, because the hormones, when the cancer has been removed, the other testis is still intact to take over the function.
All right. Now let's hear it from a professor's point of view. Now, you said by the time you were going to see Dr. Misango, you did not have interest in sexual intercourse, and you could also tell that you could not keep up with the activity itself. At this point, what interventions were put in place?
See, the thing is, before I started on the treatment for my prostate cancer, I was functioning normally, if I may put it that way.
Okay.
See, after some years, a year and a half or so, when I started noticing the obvious facts I told you about, that is this some kind of disinterest in sex, for example. I didn't have any erection at all, as used to be the case before. And then I started noticing, my breasts growing, And then at that point, you see, I decided that I might as well take some counsel from my doctor. And that is when I went and said, "Doctor, you see, I don't know what is wrong." And we were just discussing this thing in a joking kind of mood with my wife, and he said, she would take you to court for making me just another woman in the house. And we started joking. And then the doctor decided, that the best thing is to sort of put me on testosterone injection and some kind of hormonal tablet to help reverse the situation. Because, as he said, if you give someone this injection from the outside, right, it wouldn't have any problem in the body. And clearly, after taking the injection for about a year or so, my interest started coming back gradually. And today, I would think, or I know for a fact that I have no basic dysfunctional response when it comes to sex and so forth and so on. As to whatever is ejaculated, it's the kind of semen that can give someone some life. If it is functions like the natural semen, I don't know. You see, that the doctor would have to tell us about that.
Okay.
But basically, what I discovered is that there was a correlation, as it were, between the treatment I had been put on for more than a year. And of course, the images or the time when this dysfunctional, erectile dysfunction came up, because all other time before that, I didn't have anything. But I don't know whether there is a correlation or any connection at all between the kind of chemical medicine I was put on or otherwise. But certainly I suspected, from my point of view, that there was a correlation.
Okay.
The treatment and the eruption of this particular problem of erectile dysfunction.
All right, Professor. And I think Professor's testimonial attests to what we had touched on earlier. Some of the causes could be side effects of treatment. So in this case, the prostate cancer treatment led to him having issues with ED and other things, right, Dr.
Yes, actually, I can discuss what Professor described in very general terms, so that it might be important for most members of the audience who might be listening in. Now, I talked about the effect of hormones in a man. Okay, a man, just like a woman, has got hormones. And the hormone in a man that is involved with his sexual function, we call it loosely testosterone. Testosterone is the male hormone. We have other hormones in a man that can also affect his sexuality, including what you call the thyroid hormone, which basically is another hormone. So there are hormones that are important in giving a man a libido. Okay, that's an increased sexual drive. And the testosterone also is a hormone that prepares a man's cells so that they can be able to be sensitive to the effect of the normal blood flow to achieve an erection. So testosterone is important in a man. When testosterone is withdrawn for whatever purpose, then a man begins having a reduced effect of the male hormone, and then the female hormones, which are also there in a man, begin dominating.
Estrogen now.
Some of the estrogens in a man, because a man also has testosterone. He has some estrogen in him. And the active element of testosterone is what we call the activated form. We call it dihydrotestosterone. So it's the active form. Now, if for whatever reason a man's testosterone has been taken down, you are going to begin having the effect of the female hormones in a man, or the lack of the male hormone in a man, leading to feminization features occurring. And that is why we say when somebody has erectile dysfunction, we will assess and look at what could be the underlying problem. If we see hormone changes, which will include, maybe if it's a man, you begin seeing maybe he's losing his masculinity, his aggressiveness, the hair begins balding, he begins being a person who was previously very masculine, he begins getting some soft features, fatty deposition, breast engorgement, we call this basically the breast getting a bit bigger. That is as a result of reduced effect of testosterone. So the female hormones begin taking over. Associated with this, obviously, because the testosterone final effect is also in the penis, so the penis begins shrinking in size. And this is as a result of this hormone imbalance.
Okay.
Now, one of the key treatments in prostate cancer, especially prostate cancer which has already gone beyond the prostate and become metastatic, or even if it is within the prostate, we normally give what is called androgen deprivation therapy. Androgen deprivation means we are denying the cancer of testosterone. Okay? Because testosterone, the one that is produced by the body, is the one that drives the process of cancer progression.
Uh-huh.
Because the cancer cells which are in the prostate, they are under the effect of testosterone because the prostate is a sexual organ.
Okay.
So continuous stimulation by testosterone will make cancer cells of the prostate continue multiplying. So as part of our treatment, irrespective of which treatment you've used on the cancer, may it be radiation, surgery, or other methods, then we always throw in androgen deprivation. As a consequence, there'll be the side effect of erectile dysfunction.
I see.
And once we've been able to see this, for some people it might take us as early as surgery, immediately after surgery, because then you have a physical disruption of nerves that cause the erection. Then somebody gets erectile dysfunction. The other factors that are always there in play in a person who is getting prostate cancer, remember, is an elderly person, usually over the age of 50, will be having some other pre-existing conditions possibly that can cause the same. Might be hypertensive, might be diabetic, might be using some other medications, might be a smoker, might be an alcoholic. So all these things are at play. But specifically for the hormone issue with prostate cancer, it is that denial of testosterone. So is there a way of reversing it? Yes. What we do is, once we are sure that we have reached the levels of testosterone that we say castration levels, okay? Once you've achieved castration levels in a man, because that is the intention of our androgen deprivation therapy, to take the testosterone levels to very low levels that there's no chance of the cancer progressing, then we can be able to now give testosterone from the outside into a person's body so that he can now begin having his normal sexual function, assuming all the other factors are constant.
Okay,
Yes.
so in this case, that's what Professor is saying. Now he is okay, and perhaps we can talk more about perhaps if the ejaculation is the same in his case or not, and we'll get that to that in a moment. We have John, not his real name, on the line. Remember, you can reach us using those numbers at the bottom of your screen, but we are also very cognizant that men are very shy about this subject, yet they are dealing, most of them are dealing with this issue we're talking about, erectile dysfunction. So yes, you can call in and we can use a pseudonym, or you can call in anonymously. So we'll start off with John, not his real name. What is your question or comment? John, what is your question or comment?
Hello.
Good morning.
Morning, I'm John.
Please speak up. What is your question or comment?
I'm John. Morning.
Good morning. Go ahead.
Hello.
We can hear you, John.
Hello. Hello.
Okay, looks like he cannot hear us, but we'll sort that out in a moment. Hashtag new normal, even as we asked you that question, do you know someone or have you experienced erectile dysfunction? What are the challenges in accessing treatment? Remember, this is on our social media handles. Talk to us, and I understand we have some of your feedback. If you can have that on the screen. We have Naftalin Mireri who says, I think fear or shyness, therefore youth prefer going for Viagra sold over the counter than facing the hospital for further intervention. Unlike old men that don't fear the aspect of underlying challenges, secret medical consultation can help them. Interesting perspective. Crystal Embag says, unlikely men have such problems don't really come out. What they can do is to wear a cap, go to a local pharmacy and ask for boosters. Crystal, we hear you. We hear you. We have another one from Owevoma who says, I think we men are just shy to come out, even feel shy to make an appointment in fear of being judged. And yet, Daktari is here to say, I'm here to help you. So please reach out. Anonymous says, I'm suffering from erectile dysfunction. Any advice or help will be highly appreciated. Well, Anonymous, that's why we're having this conversation. If we could understand a little bit more about the symptoms you're dealing with and perhaps some of the underlying conditions that you are facing, something that will give Daktari a good perspective as to what it is that you're dealing with. Remember, that hashtag is new normal, and of course you can reach us using those numbers at the bottom of your screen. And yes, you can use a pseudonym for those that are very shy to actually put this out there as themselves. We take a short break. We'll be right back.
In the past few months, we've shown up for each other.
Over and over again.
And as we continue to navigate COVID-19,
we still need you to be there for each other.
By doing one simple thing: wear a mask.
Even if you think you're low risk,
a mask will help protect you and others.
It's pretty simple. I wear a mask to protect my teammates,
myself, and you. So wear a mask to protect yourself and others. Let's stop coronavirus together.
The Age, your freely quarterly magazine found in the Business Daily, is back this March, discussing business and sustainability. Can companies preserve cash and grow earnings in this business setup while ensuring minimal harm to the environment, protecting communities and consumers, as well as offering a boost to the economy? Read this and much more on business and sustainability in the various sectors. Grab your copy on Wednesday, the 31st March 2021. To advertise in this feature, contact 0723 223 266 or email theedge@ke.nationmedia.com. Business Daily.
Kenya as a whole is potential for cotton. If Lamu is growing cotton, Kitui is growing cotton, Makueni is growing cotton, Kisumu is growing cotton, Bungoma, Busia, including Mandera.
We started with 5 farmers, we went to 19 farmers, and then we started spreading now. We have already been able to meet up to 2,000 farmers.
Our work as CoopBank is to strengthen the PAVI Farmers Cooperative Society, to be able to offer financial solutions to their farmers so that when the farmer comes to the circle, he's able to get very quick credit and be able to go back and continue producing the cotton.
Beat sensitivity pain fast with Sensodyne Rapid Action for clinically proven relief in 60 seconds.
These flags are representing the people that live in Philadelphia. That's what I'm doing.
To make it in America, you need to be focused, steady, you need to be consistent, you need to work.
My Swahili is still pretty hopeless. Jambo Bwana, Missouri Sana.
You can take an African out of Africa, but you can't take out the African in them.
The experience in Kenya has been a great one. It's been positive. The weather is great. It's like our home city in Nigeria, which is Jos.
I watch Daring Abroad. Congratulations for what you do.
In the current financial year, the taxpayer is spending about 119 billion shillings in servicing public sector pension liabilities.
Theirs is a pay-as-you-go. It's non-contributory. And that's why I find that the pension crisis as far as the government's employees are concerned.
The government is finally migrating civil servants from a defined benefits pension scheme to a contributory scheme.
In January, we have about 384, which basically we're talking about almost 400,000 civil servants who have moved in.
What does this mean for you as a civil servant?
15%, some would argue, is relatively high if you look at the industry standards, where I think typically we're looking at 7.5% from the employee and 7.5% being matched by the employer.
Join us in the next edition of Business Redefined as we discuss the Public Service Superannuation Scheme.
After a year full of uncertainty, Kenya's leaders of tomorrow will soon sit for their KCPE and KCSE national exams. Join the Daily Nation team in wishing our candidates success in the Faulu na Daily Nation campaign. Log on to success.nation.co.ke from your phone and send the candidates details and a heartfelt personalized message for only 299 Kenya shillings, or include a photo of the candidate for only 999 Kenya shillings. The messages of hope will be published in the Daily Nation Junior Sport magazine every Monday and My Network magazine every Friday for the duration of the campaign. Campaign runs from 5th March till 15th April 2021. Tusimame na watoto wa Kenya na Daily Nation.
In this country, we have a tradition, a celebration of culture, where one community meets another. On this table, we present the best of the best. And for those that dare to go the extra mile, the ones that try something new, to them, we reserve a seat at the table. Introducing Kikoman, for taste and tradition.
Try Panadol Advance for relief from headaches, body aches, and fever. With Panadol's Optizorb formula, the tablet gently breaks down in the stomach, quickly absorbs, and starts providing pain relief in 15 minutes. For fast and effective pain relief that you can trust, try Panadol Advance.
Thank you for staying with your world. My name is Gladys Gachanja. Today we are having a conversation that most people shy away from or have it in harsh tones, erectile dysfunction. And I have to be honest, for me to put this together, it took quite a lot of pleading to men to actually be part of this conversation, because most would rather not have it, yet they have the issue at hand. So how do we understand this better and also understand that there are interventions for the same is by actually having such forums where we have those that are walking in these shoes, talk about their experiences and also talk about the interventions therein. And to help us with this conversation, still with us in studio, Dr. Misango, who is a general surgeon and urologist in the other studio, joined by Peter Madheri Kaira, who is a testicular cancer survivor. And joining us on phone, we have Professor Leyland Lawford Imunde, who is a prostate cancer survivor. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. And we have another gentleman joining us on call, John, not his real name. What is your question or comment? John, go ahead.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
What's your question?
I'm Fidel.
Okay.
Fidel John.
Uh-huh.
Ningependa kuuliza dokta, hata kama hiyo swali ya mbatani, lakini ningependa kumuuliza kuna kitu ilinifura. Hello.
Endelea.
Kuna kitu wembe, nilijikata na wembe.
Okay.
Hapo kwa penis, kwa udenika kitu kakanifura kidogo, so ningependa kumuuliza hiyo inaweza, na sisikiangi uchungu na akaponi, so sijui kama inaweza kuwa pia ni dalili ya hiyo nini ama ya kansa ama.
Okay, first of all, umekuwa na symptoms zozote ambazo tumegusia leo kuhusu ED?
Hapana, sijakuwa nazo.
Kwa hivyo angalau for now we know hauna shida katika hiyo department, si ndio?
Sina hiyo shida, ningependa tu kumuuliza hivyo, ni kitu tu vile nilijikata kaka nini, so kakabaki kamepona, lakini bado ni inaonekana kama nyama, so nilimesema niulize.
Okay, how long ago did this happen?
It's now almost 3 months.
3 months. Na unasema haina uchungu?
Haina uchungu. Na kakalipona.
Aya, sawa sawa. Asante sana kwa kupiga simu. And Daktari, I think what he's dealing with here is scar tissue, or perhaps you can give us a better understanding of the same.
I shy away from giving a medical consultation from an online conversation because there's so much information which is missing. As urologists, what we normally insist on doing whenever we have, we can only talk about some of these things in a very general way. But referring to a particular person, there are so many unknowns, okay, which might be either withheld or not exactly known, that will require some prompting in a consultation setup. Apart from that, there's also the benefit of the in-person examination that looks at somebody in total, so that you're able to look at a problem and either dismiss it or give it some more significance. So it will be difficult to answer to the gentleman, and I will want to basically talk in very, very general terms, and whenever there's a question which is very specific, I can be able to give a specific answer. Now, when there is anything of concern in the testes of a man, as I said, among the young people, whenever there is any swelling in the testes, it's very common for men to try and explain it away and say, oh, I scratched myself, oh, this thing happened. You see, human beings by nature want to belittle their problems as much as in their heads they're worrying about it. So it's always good to make sure that you have eliminated the danger things, so that now you can be able to reassure somebody that it is not cancer. So I cannot say what it is. All I can just say is when there is a tissue or a mass in the testis, it should never be ignored.
Okay, so in this case, he's saying that he cut himself. It could be something else.
Yes, that's why I say I cannot respond to him directly in this kind of a manner. It is something of concern enough. He needs to take himself to a medical doctor and remove the shyness, because I'm here today so that I can remove some of the fears surrounding this topic that is considered taboo by so many people. And so it makes a lot of our men and boys stay with a lot of problems. Unasema anavumilia kama mwanamume. But that kuvumilia sometimes causes a lot of other problems.
Very well said. Okay, let's cross over to Peter. And I think one of those issues ya kuvumilia kama mwanaume is when you know something is off, but you keep going back to the pharmacy to help you out, or you're trying to find solutions to the issue instead of going for medical attention. Peter, you have a story about the same thing you did, and there's a doctor who actually reprimanded you for the same. Tell us more.
Yeah, you know, the greatest embarrassment is when a man is suffering silently because he tends to think that he's suffering alone. And there's nothing further from the truth. It is true. And so there are so many ways which are normally used to like enhance. And the greatest thing that makes people to enhance is because we men believe that the only way that we can be able to prove our masculinity is when you are on bed. And if you want to kill a man completely, tell him that is not good on bed. And so you would find yourself looking for ways of trying to enhance your sexual drive. And little do you know that whatever you might be going for could be having some side effects. Like we have always been hearing of men being described having died in the line of duty, having gone for Viagra. And Viagra is meant to treat another condition, but not ED. And so with me, I went for a lesser harmful device which I don't need to discuss because I don't want to encourage people to go into that. And the reason being, you know, and especially if you have you are a family man, you have a spouse, and all of a sudden you would be making like 4 louds, and then all of a sudden you are on 1 loud, 2 louds, you know, there will be this great question: where are the 2 louds going to? I used to receive 4 louds. I'm not receiving 1 loud. Where are these 2 other 2 louds going to? So, and in order to avoid such questions, you would always find people going for sex enhancement devices, but it becomes harmful in the long run. There are those that normally have long-term effects. There are those that have short-term effects. And what I came to realize, sex is more of psychological than physical.
Okay, so Peter, in your case, you said you also did a lot of over-the-counter prescription, right?
No.
Okay, but you delayed going to the doctor.
So much.
All right, and why?
You know, there is some stigma that is associated with, and especially when we are talking about our reproductive health and reproductive organs. And by the time you are going to the doctor, you are crowded with so many fears. Number one, you're not going to know the kind of diagnosis that will be done. And out of ignorance, most men tend to think that once you're having a problem with your reproductive health or your reproductive organ, there are those who normally tend to think that the most probable outcome will be an STI. And since you fear that, you like try to medicate yourself. Number two, how do you start? How do you explain? And this does not only involve explaining; it even involves displaying.
True. Yes.
You have to explain. You have to display, and you know you don't have control over the kind of doctor that you are going to meet. Yeah? You can imagine you going and you are required to display, and it's already the doctor. You know, at times.
Yes.
At the times, hello. At the times, it becomes a bit difficult, and people tend to shy.
Okay, how did you explain to your wife?
It took time, and thank God that most of the time we were not staying together. We were not living together for most of the time. So I would go home over the weekend, at the times a fortnight, at the times after a month, with my own reasons.
Okay.
And now, after now, I stopped shying, and I went to seek treatment. That is when now. That is when now. Something is going.
Go ahead.
So that is when now I went, and she was able to get some advice. She was able to get some information.
Yes.
And from that time, maybe the kind of misjudgment that she would be having, it was normal.
Okay, and Dr. just listening to Peter, he illustrates what most men deal with, the shyness, the stigma. How do you even start to say that you cannot get your functions right?
Fine. Now, Gladys, I think maybe it's important to let people know that erectile dysfunction has been with us since time immemorial. Even before the advent of modern medicine, we have erectile dysfunction described. And previously it used to go by the ugly name of impotence. And impotence was a name or a word that kind of ostracized a man, because impotence means useless. Okay, so a man was considered useless because he cannot have an erection, and that was the thing which was defining a man at the time. So from the ancient Greeks, ancient Egyptians, Chinese, Hindus, Africans. There were all sorts of theories to explain why somebody has erectile dysfunction or why somebody would be considered impotent. Kings would never become kings if at all they were not able to perform their work of taking care of their women. And it was considered a curse in some places like in Egypt, and that required cleansing, okay? So anything that ostracizes somebody, it makes people hide.
Yes.
Because when you come out in the open, you are judged. And it is still persistent up to now because people will talk about it. In fact, all of us, in young boys growing up in school, in high school, they'll talk about how potent they are because they have to live to this image. Because, you know, right now we have internet, we have social media, we have a lot of these things which basically they hype how a man's performance should be. And they also watch pornography. So there is a lot of expectation. Huh? And when somebody feels they are not doing what they're supposed to do, then they shy off. Because whether we like it or not, sex defines a man in so many ways. Okay. And now, when in a young person, as I said, if I can begin going through some of the causes.
Now, before you get to those causes, let's just take some calls before they drop off. Emmanuel from Nairobi, what's your question or comment? Okay, we seem to have lost them. So yes, the causes.
Yes. So I'd say in younger people, a lot of times it will be anxiety or performance, what we call performance anxiety, because a person has there's so much expectation of himself, what he's supposed to do, based on what he has been told, what he has seen, what he has read. And if he feels it is not up to par, he gets concerned. Now, it's a good thing that a lot of young men these days come to the consultation and they actually think they have a problem, but when you go through them, you actually realize it is too much expectations they have of themselves.
So you're just giving yourself pressure?
Yes.
Okay, now let's hear from Emmanuel, Daktari. Emmanuel from Nairobi, what's your question or comment?
Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
I just wanted to know from Daktari the relationship between prostate cancer and intercourse, because there are a lot of misconceptions. Some people say for a man, if he overdoes it using the enhancement pills, in long term, he will get the prostate cancer. And also, if he doesn't have it, in the long term, he will have prostate cancer. So I want the Daktari to tell whether it's true or to demystify the misconception.
All right. Thank you, Emmanuel from Nairobi. And at this point, do you want to answer the question or we continue with the causes first?
No, answer the question because I want to go to work.
Lose that question.
Okay. He says he's going to work, so perhaps you can answer that question.
Yes. There is actually a myth which these days has been proven in a lot of studies. The more sex a man has, the more their prostate stays safe.
Okay. So is it a myth or proven?
It is actually medically proven that frequent ejaculations keep a prostate healthy. Now, outside of that, we also have what he has mentioned, that if somebody is using a lot of performance-enhancing drugs, this mostly will be young people who are using it for recreation. Now, what is also been known is the more sexually transmitted infections and infection of the prostate that somebody has, the more likelihood, the chances of prostate diseases coming in. Because now you're having irritation in the prostate due to a disease process.
And this can also lead to ED?
Whenever the prostate is irritated, there is pain. When somebody is having pain around the prostate, it is not possible for them to have satisfactory sexual intercourse. So all these things are coming into play. But specifically, he mentioned about prostate cancer. There is an association between recurring infections in the prostate, what you call prostatitis, end long-term development of prostate cancer, because, as I said, cancer develops as a result of continuous irritation of normal tissues by whichever process, so that it triggers a problem. Okay. Now, the opposite is if a person has his normal hormones and does not have frequent ejaculations, then there's a buildup of secretions within the prostate that can also begin causing problems with that prostate. And it is true, people who have been castrated before they went into puberty will never develop prostate cancer, but they will have erectile dysfunction as a consequence. Mm-hmm. It is also true that a lot of people who have been studied who have, for whatever reasons, they have stayed away from indulging, and they have their hormones because the testosterone is making the prostate develop, but the hormones, the secretions inside, which are supposed to be sexual organs, sexual secretions, are not coming out, and that buildup can cause problems. So it is by design, that a man, from the time he is a boy until he becomes an adult, he will have involuntary ejaculations, which are called wet dreams. Mm-hmm. At some point, he'll begin having masturbation. At some point, he will be able to have a normal sexual relations, and is supposed to be sustainable through life for what you call a healthy prostate.
Interesting perspective. Yes. Now, Daktari, before we take a short break, please run us through some of the other causes you were talking about.
Fine. Now, I talked about, I think I've talked about the young people. Mm-hmm. Now, for the people who are over the ages of 40, I said, let's begin from the top. Mental illnesses, or a mental problem, or any disturbance of the mind, may it be stress at work, may it be depression, may it be a difficult situation at the workplace, may it be an understanding spouse, may it be marital problems, anything that disturbs the mind will make it difficult for somebody to concentrate and have a good erection, okay? Because there has to be an interplay between the mind, the nerves, and the blood vessels, for somebody to be able to have. So, mental illnesses will cause erectile dysfunction. And conversely, when somebody has an erectile dysfunction, they will begin having now an increase of those mental stresses, because now when a man is not able to have an erection and his spouse or his partner is expecting him to have one, then he begins having a fear of anticipating sex. And so he is going to begin shying away from initiating sex because he doesn't want to get disappointed, and that will cause a mental problem in him, and marital problems will come in because the woman also begins feeling suspicious. Why does this man not want me anymore? The man begins getting more and more withdrawn. He goes to bed late after she has slept, so that it is not an expectation of him at all. Okay, so this is a chicken and the egg kind of a situation. So any person, for whatever reason, when they're not having, when they're having erectile dysfunction, they'll get a mental problem. Okay, which is why we say ED is a combination of, it's a medical, surgical, and a mental illness. Now, when it comes to the nerves, any condition that affects the nerves, and the nerves are these tissues that basically conduct impulses. You have things like high blood pressure, diabetes, patients who are having problems with their nutrition, so the nerves are not forming properly. We have people who are taking dangerous medications that are making the nerves not fire properly, okay? And practically any medication that somebody takes has the potential to cause erectile dysfunction, but it will be different in different people depending on how they have been growing up with their nutrition and their body being damaged or not damaged by environmental factors. Okay. Now, when it comes to the blood, because the blood is the ultimate inducer of an erection, because the blood has to flow. Many conditions can cause a problem with blood flow. The commonest we talk about is diabetes. Diabetes, by nature of the disease, it makes the blood, or rather it causes some changes in the blood, so that the walls thicken and a very little blood is passing through to go to the area supposed to supply. So when blood is not flowing well, then somebody cannot have a good erection. Okay. There are conditions which are associated with diabetes, like obesity. Actually, let me talk about people who are having problems with their cholesterol.
Okay, now I am being told we really need to take a short break at this point. We'll come back, especially because you're now talking about the burden of NCDs, non-communicable diseases, and now how it ties to even ED. Dr. will tell us more right after this short break, as we also take some of your questions that I'm seeing on that hashtag New Normal. Stay with us.
Family is working together today. It is creating opportunities for a lifetime of happiness. The future is bright because you can always bank on family. Family Bank, with you for life.
Introducing Ushindi Cream Bar Soap. Ushindi Cream Bar Soap with Oxy Bright removes stains effortlessly and brightens colors. Available in 1 kilogram and 800 gram bars and 175 gram tablets. Also available in all your favorite variants. Ushindi, a quality product from Pwani Oils.
To achieve great things in life, you must do little things every day, like the 1, 2, 3 with Colgate.
1, wake up, wake up. 2, brush up, brush up. 3, smile through your day with a fresh breath and strong tea. Smile through your day with a fresh breath and strong tea.
Do the 1, 2, 3 with Colgate and give yourself a future to smile about.
With the Stay Soft refill, saving money is as easy as snip, pour, mix with water, and shake. Stay Soft refill. It's 2 liters of Stay Soft for up to 30% less.
Showcase your everyday home cooking using Kikkoman soy sauce. Buy yourself Kikkoman soy sauce today, cook with it, and share a video demonstrating on how you cooked with Kikkoman soy sauce for a chance to have your video featured on NTV this Friday during the Pishi Home Chef Show at 11 a.m. You should share your video on the Pishi Instagram page, Pishi254, or Pishi Facebook page, Pishi254, with the hashtag Pishi Home Chef, and master Kikkoman Facebook page, Kikkoman East Africa. Gift hampers to be won. Kikkoman, for taste and tradition.
Try Panadol Advance for relief from headaches, body aches, and fever. With Panadol's Optizorb formula, the tablet gently breaks down in the stomach, quickly absorbs, and starts providing pain relief in 15 minutes. For fast and effective pain relief that you can trust, try Panadol Advance.
Thank you for staying with Your World. My name is Gladys Gachanja, and I see that hashtag new normal, of course, with so many of your questions to Daktari, even as we understand more about erectile dysfunction, abbreviated as ED, and also those phone calls coming through, those numbers at the bottom of your screen. And speaking of which, we have Sami on the line. What is your question or comment?
Yeah, thank you, Gachanja.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Sami.
Go ahead.
I was diagnosed with CA, that is prostate cancer,
Mm-hmm.
2019.
Yes.
And I went on operation the same year. Yeah.
Yes.
Then histology received that I was at stage 3B.
Mm-hmm.
I went through 6 sessions of chemo.
Mm-hmm.
Then I was put on hormonal management.
Mm-hmm.
Then I did radio towards the end of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Those were 10 sessions. Then I'm still on hormonal treatment.
Okay.
Question.
Mm-hmm.
The hormonal treatment points at ADT, that is something deprivation therapy. Yeah?
Androgen deprivation, yes.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Now, but then occasionally,
Mm-hmm.
I'm with my wife here. Okay?
Yes.
Occasionally, okay, I think for sure I had the ED.
Okay.
But occasionally you find that we are together
Mm-hmm.
and things happen.
Okay.
Now, is there a risk that, erectile function is coming back? Eh?
Is there a risk of ED coming back?
No.
Mm-hmm.
I'm asking, is there a risk that now that the ED has subsided,
Mm-hmm.
is the testosterone going up? And I think this one is the one that feeds the cancer cells.
The libido. Okay. So are you asking if the testosterone levels are slowly coming back by themselves?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Sami, for calling. Do we have another caller online? All right. Now, remember, we still have Professor Imunde on the line. Professor, you are also a survivor of prostate cancer, and you said that you got your functions back. Do you feel like your libido gets better and better with time now? Professor Imunde? Do we have Professor on the line? Okay, we seem to have lost Professor, but Daktari, at this point, let's start off with that question. Is it possible for the testosterone levels to start just, coming back by themselves?
Now, difficult to say for sure because I do not know what kind of intervention somebody has had, because the surgery that the gentleman, the caller could have had, could have been either removal of the prostate, I don't know. It could have been removal of the testes, I don't know. He has mentioned that he has had also radiotherapy.
And chemotherapy.
Mm-hmm. So this is what I call the sledgehammer approach that we have sometimes for metastatic disease. And the cancer itself can cause erectile dysfunction. The surgery will cause erectile dysfunction. The radiation will cause erectile dysfunction because the nerves are destroyed. That's why I say it's difficult to know exactly which surgery he has had. However, what we know is when you've had your testes, or rather when you had castration, where testosterone has been brought to 0 levels, it should not necessarily begin coming up unless you're having now what is called incomplete blockage of androgen deprivation, because there are other parts in the body that can now begin taking the function of producing testosterone. And when that happens in a person who is being followed for prostate cancer, where the testosterone levels are rising without any external intervention, it is best that he sees his doctor to be able to find out where this extra source of testosterone is coming from, because the endogenous, the internally produced testosterone will cause the prostate cancer to get worse.
Okay.
That is true. So that is somebody who needs to get himself to his urologist so that he can go and have some more extensive workups.
All right, I understand. We have some questions on that hashtag new normal. If you can have those questions on the screen. First of all, there's one here. Is prostate cancer hereditary?
There's a familial pattern to prostate cancer.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yes.
Daniel Nyakaba says, what are the side effects for those who use Viagra to solve ED? Daktari?
It depends on the population group. For young people, they can get erectile dysfunction later on in life because they become over-dependent. For elderly seniors, without supervision, we do not know the cause of the erectile dysfunction. Remember, we normally say erectile dysfunction might be the earliest indicator of an underlying cardiovascular problem. The reason being, all these things that can cause a problem with delivery of blood, the penile vessels are some of the smallest, even smaller than the heart vessels. So it is a good thing that the body finds a way of alerting somebody in a very dramatic way that there's a problem with perfusion. And if blood is not going well into the penis, it's just a matter of time before we begin having the same complication. Normally we talk about within 2 to 5 years, there are problems with the heart. If the underlying problem of erectile dysfunction is due to a cardiovascular problem, this person is more than guaranteed of having a heart attack in the next 5 years.
Okay, would that answer, and this is a question that's from Dennis, who's saying, would this explain the number of men we have seen in the recent past succumb in the line of duty, so to speak?
It would explain, especially if they're having unsupervised intake of these medications, which are, they call the blue pills. There are quite a number of them. Because what happens is, remember, sex is a high exercise activity.
Yes.
Okay. It takes a lot of energy. And when somebody has got blood not flowing well into their heart, they're supposed to be keeping that function of their heart for their important functions only of survival. So when people are having a heart disease, we advise them not to exert themselves because they will not be able to. But when they've taken a performance-enhancing drug and they believe they have to perform, then they exert themselves because they're concentrating on the erection, but then the heart will fail. Because the heart, as much as he wants to have the erection, his body is not in a suitable state of mind to engage in a physical activity. Okay? So the sexual activity that he's engaging in exerts the heart, so he might get a heart attack.
Okay.
Yes.
All
so
right.
remember, this is something very important that people have to know. Erectile dysfunction, whose cause is an underlying cardiovascular problem, is a disaster waiting to happen.
Okay.
Unless somebody has gotten himself reviewed. It is not so much of a problem with the young people because they do not have usually those underlying problems. So we will get a lot of these incidents reported in the senior citizens barely, simply because of that association.
All right, we have another question, that hashtag new normal, if you can have it on the screen. Kamwaro Charles says, what causes too much libido? Daktari, there are people who have the opposite problem.
Now, you see, people should not confuse libido with erectile, or rather lack of libido with a lack of erectile, with erectile dysfunction. The two are different. Libido is the sexual urge, okay, and the desire to have sex. Now, people with erectile dysfunction, some of them have got some of the highest libidos I know of, okay? They want, but the body has refused.
Okay.
Okay? So these are, the younger people, of course, will have a more libido, because that is, libido is testosterone driven and dietary also, because it's about the mind. Libido is about the mind, and a healthy person will have a good libido. It's also about how good somebody feels about themselves. people feel good about themselves, who exercise regularly, who eat well, who are confident, will have an increased libido, okay? Because it is part and parcel of somebody's well-being. A reduced libido, on the other hand, is the opposite. Somebody who has got low self-esteem, somebody who has got other issues which are causing his stress psychologically, somebody who is overweight, somebody who is not confident, will have a reduced sexual desire. So there are many factors that can increase the libido. It could be just by imagination. Some people will just imagine and they get a sexual desire. Some people will take in a medication. Some people will take in a drug. Some people will abuse a drug to get that libido. And there are things which are called aphrodisiacs that have existed from time immemorial that are supposed to improve that sexual appetite, so to speak. And they will not work for everybody the same way. So this is what sometimes people confuse. They say, so-and-so has got a very good libido. And then the person comes and says, I use spinach, or I use legumes, or I use ginger. And everybody takes that as the new norm and say, now I'm using this. No, everybody is specific to their own bodies.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, let's go back to Professor Imunde. Now, you said by the time you're getting to Daktari, you were saying you did not even have the interest in engaging in sexual activity. Now that you got the intervention, you said things are back to normal. Do you have libido than you had before?
It's come back. But you see, you must accept the fact that any change that happens somewhere along the line, of course, is bound to change the way things are. I would, in other words, I'm saying simply that if we are talking about sexual urge, which is what Dr. has been trying to distinguish from erectile functioning. The thing is, these days I have almost restored almost 75% of my libido, my sexual urge.
Okay. Now, Professor, Daktari has mentioned that some people say some foods are good for them, that like they enhance their libido, they give them the desire. Have you had to look into the diet that you take, perhaps to help you along?
Not really. Whereas, you see, most of my time I've been very careful in my life. You see, I am at about 76 years of age. And I have always taken very special care with my diet all through. But the more important thing is that I've constantly, if I experience any slight change within my system, I have always to seek a medical opinion.
Okay.
That's what I do. Number two, I don't remember any time in my life when I have resorted to libido enhancing that drugs or anything like, or foods of any type at all.
Okay.
So I have not been in that particular sphere at all. But the most important thing is that, you see, I have always been careful. Immediately I notice any change in my body, the way I do things, then I always go and consult with my doctor.
Professor,
I would recommend.
Self-awareness is very important, Professor. Let me hear from Peter briefly. Now, we've had of muhombero, we've had of nuts, we've had of various things that different communities say help in enhancing the libido or when you're having issues with your reproductive health. Peter, what have you taken up to help you along?
Like we know, most people normally have, and especially when you have some physical issues,
yes,
most people have some compromised immunity. And once your immunity has been compromised, then you must be in a position to eat healthy in order to take care of it. And if you eat healthy and you're able to restore your immunity, and even if there might be some physical aspects contributing to your problem, with a good healthy diet, in most cases it really works, because there comes a time where you don't just have to eat to get satisfied. You have to eat because you know that you have some healthy benefits from whatever you are taking. And so I did change my lifestyle. The way I used to feed, I feed differently. And just like I said in the beginning, it is more of psychological than physical. So the moment I feed well, I take care of my body, and then psychologically I accept whatever I've been going through. You know, we need to get out of denial.
Okay.
You know, you get out of denial, because the more you deny that there is a problem, the more you deny that you are not the you who you knew, then the more you are going to suffer. So, number one, you need to change your lifestyle, and then number two, you need to accept that the situation as it is. And more importantly, like Professor has been saying, we should always be seeking medical advice and attention, because in most cases we might be taking it just like a mere problem, but there might be an underlying problem that could be contributing to that. So, we should know, we should stop shying. We come out, we seek help, because that kind of a problem might be a signal, might be a warning of another serious underlying problem. And that is what most people tend to understand, and so we end up being underdiagnosed.
Very well said. Thank you, Peter, and of course, Professor. But even as we wrap up this conversation, Daktari, the question is, how do you treat it? What are the interventions? We've talked about diets, enhancers. What else is out there?
Now, the treatment for erectile dysfunction will depend on the cause. The best treatment is prevention. Preventive measures for erectile dysfunction in a man is simply what you call healthy living, because you want to keep your nerves intact, you want to keep your blood vessels intact, which means ensuring that you take a well-balanced diet, not when the problem arises, because that time is like you're closing the door after the horses have bolted. It means somebody who already begins living a healthy lifestyle from the word go, okay? Because you know the foods which are important in terms of nutritional benefits. And I think everybody went through this in biology in primary school. You know about a balanced diet. Fruits, whole meats, natural substances that people take with minimal fat, minimal salt, minimal sugar. Okay? In other words, what has been described as a Mediterranean diet consisting of whole foods is very healthy in a body, so that you minimize the amount of toxins that you are producing, because these toxins are the ones which are going to cause the destructive changes in your nerves and in your blood vessels. So when you take these whole foods, they contain what you call antioxidants, because they detoxify the body, because they clear off these harmful elements in the body that will cause cancer and other problems with the nerves and the blood vessels. So if you want to control diabetes, prevention is better than cure. Once somebody has gotten diabetes, then a change of lifestyle prevents the progression of the disease, not exactly reversing it. So we might find now when somebody has prevented the progression with a good lifestyle where they have reduced their body weight, they are maintaining a good diet, where they are avoiding smoking, because smoking causes problems with blood vessels. It actually interferes. So we talk about stopping smoking, minimizing alcohol intake, removing sugars, removing fats, removing salt, and keeping your diet as natural as possible without what are called chemical additives. Okay? Now, that is the best way of having somebody in a good way, together with exercises, because exercise naturally keeps the blood flowing. It increases the heart rate to pump blood, and the more blood you pump into the various areas of the body, the better for your circulation. Now, once you now have erectile dysfunction, the various medications which have been in use, the first devices were actually things to try and prop up the rigid, the penis, which are called implants. These have been with us in other parts of the world since the 70s. And they were quite awkward and uncomfortable because it meant people have to get rods put into their penises to get an erection after the diet had failed. Then we had the onset of injections into the penis to get some medication which are put into the urethra that physically make the blood vessels dilate to allow blood to flow in. In the late 1990s, we had the advent of the medicines which actually changed the way things were being done because previously it required a lot of physical intervention by somebody to keep it up. Now, when medicines came about, beginning with Viagra in 1998, it was basically deemed like a magic pill because it was easily available and it was taken out there to the market, and people took it up because it was it is a discreet way. You can go and get it without having to involve anybody else and begin using. We have since then had so many other medications that have come, but they all work the same way in terms of opening and improving the blood flow into the penis so that somebody is able to sustain an erection. What happens if the medications have failed? Or do they have other alternatives to medications? Yes, the implants are making a comeback, okay? Because people are now looking at some of the side effects of the medications and saying, now, can you go into implants now where somebody has control of his own body? And we have implants, which somebody, it's inserted into the body surgically, and it's only the man who knows, and maybe the partner, if he wants her to know that he has the implant. Because he has control of the erection, it's a pump mechanism. He pumps, gets an erection. He can keep it for as long as he wants the erection. When he's done, it does not interfere with the sensation. It enables him to ejaculate. And when he's happy, he deflates it, the balloon, and he gets a limb erection. So that is one of the alternatives which is there. We have injections which are still available. Remember, these ones were replaced by the medications.
Yes.
But because now medications have been with us for about 20 years and people are beginning to get some problems with them, we are now going back to, we are repeating history, you know. That's how it normally happens. We have other devices which are called suction devices. They look like some contraptions out of a horror movie because the man has to put it on his penis, make some pumping action. Some of them are battery driven so that it brings blood into the penis, and then a ring is put at the base of the penis so that you can sustain the erection. Okay. Now, if at all somebody's cause is due to problems with what is called excessive leakage of blood from the penis, then same thing can be done. A ring can be applied, or there are some medications which are given to stop the leakage of blood. If at all somebody has a deformity with the penis that causes a painful erection that scares him to have sex, then that is addressed by surgery to remove that plaque. If at all is a mental illness, that is addressed. If at all is a medication, because a lot of medications that are in circulation right now have the potential to cause erectile dysfunction. So both the diseases, diabetes and hypertension, will cause, the medicine will cause, and so the solution is to find a way around it. And it's a problem that is not going to go away. Implants have made a comeback because once inserted, they kind of gave somebody control of their sexuality.
Okay, Dr. Ring, even as we bid farewell, what would you like to encourage the men who shy away from seeing professionals like you who can actually intervene?
What I say is we have been trained for a reason. It's in anticipation that there are people outside there with problems and we are living in this community. It's our work to take care of community problems. And among the biggest problems that affect men is erectile dysfunction. I'm a person who is available. We basically try to look at the cause. we do some investigation. Some of them could be a bit expensive, but it's worth the journey. Some of them is easy. Basically, you can see the cost straightforward, and we take care of it. So there's no point of shying. The more people get scared, the more the problem gets worse. Because the more you stay without having an erection, the worse the erectile dysfunction gets. Because the more blood goes into the penis, because organs work best when they're functioning. When you don't have blood, then things begin shrinking even more. And that's normally one of the causes, issues that sometimes will bring a man, because he says, I've noticed that my organ is getting smaller. Okay? Hiding for so long causes problems. It's very common also in people who've had spinal conditions, because lack of that erection causes more and more problems, so that it becomes extremely difficult to use medications, and that's why these implants are making a comeback to try and alleviate the suffering of people. Yes.
Okay, Dr. Samson Misango, general surgeon and urologist, with a lot of advice and definitely information to our gentlemen this morning, even as we looked at ED. And Peter Maderi Kaira, testicular cancer survivor, and Professor Lelian Lawford Imunde, who's a prostate cancer survivor. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being candid about your journeys and even joining us on this conversation, even as fellow men shy away from the same. I'm sure many of them watching today are thankful that we had this discussion and had men speak into their lives. Dr. What is your last comment?
I want to just end by saying that apart from being a medical doctor, I'm also a father of daughters. And one of them is 22 years old, so she's outside here in the world. The other one is a Form 4 candidate. And I think it will be very, very, very inappropriate if I finish this interview without wishing her success in the exams. And also the other people who are sitting the exams in the country, I wish them the best, and may they get what they deserve in life.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Asante sana, Daktari. Well, that's it from us here on Your World. Tomorrow, my colleague, that is Victor Kiprop, will be here speaking to you about something that is quite interesting. Book smart versus street smart. Now, if you remember going through school, perhaps you ended up taking courses that you did not like, but you were forced into it, and then later on you found your passion and are doing so well. Or the vice versa. Whatever your circumstances are, it will be good to actually share and also understand how we can help each other and even our children grow into their passions and make the best out of it. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 7 a.m.
Presenting the new Harpic Bathroom Cleaner. Compared to ordinary detergents, its thick formulation gives you superior cleaning and kills 99.9% of germs and viruses all around the bathroom. Blue
for the toilet
and red
for the bathroom.
Get a Pondi by Awiko. Dial star 812 star 802 hash. Skiza Non-Nation.
In the current financial year, the taxpayer is spending about 119 billion shillings in servicing public sector pension liabilities.
Theirs is a pay-as-you-go. It's non-contributory. And that's why we find there's a pension crisis as far as the government's employees are concerned.
The government is finally migrating civil servants from a defined benefits pension scheme to a contributory scheme.
In January, we have about 384, which basically we're talking about almost 400,000 civil servants who have moved in.
What does this mean for you as a civil servant?
15%, some would argue, is relatively high if you look at the industry standards, where I think typically we're looking at 7.5% from the employee and 7.5% being matched by the employer.
Join us in the next edition of Business Redefined as we discuss the public service superannuation scheme.
You did the most horrible thing a person can do to another, aside from